A man reportedly left his home carrying a gun, and police later said he had used that same weapon to end his own life. But then one question changed everything. If the gun was actually used, where did it go? Because when investigators reportedly examined the scene, the weapon wasn't there. Then another problem appeared. A casing that should have been important to the investigation was reportedly missing too. And just when that already sounded strange, questions about the postmortem began piling up. No gunshot residue samples from the hands, no proper forensic measurements of the injuries, no x-rays, and even concerns about whether some injuries on the body had been documented at all. Now a senior police surgeon has reportedly pointed out 14 serious shortcomings in the postmortem report. And the case has reached a point where the family is demanding answers that could completely change how Mir Raza Ali's final hours are understood. Because this is no longer simply a question of what happened to him. It's a question of whether the investigation itself missed something important. According to police sources cited in the latest update, investigators believe Mir Raza Ali was not killed by another person. Their reported position is that Mir Raza himself fired the shot. The reason they reportedly give is financial pressure. Mir Raza was allegedly carrying debts of around 5 crore rupees and was struggling to repay the money. He had reportedly tried asking other friends for loans so he could deal with the financial pressure, but according to the police account, he wasn't able to arrange the money. The theory was that the growing pressure pushed him into depression and eventually led him to take the extreme step. But that explanation immediately created another problem. Where was the pistol? If Mir Raza had fired the shot himself, investigators would naturally need to locate the weapon. But according to the report, when police examined the scene, the pistol was not found there. And that question is difficult to ignore. A pistol cannot simply disappear from a crime scene. Someone would have to move it. So who took it? Where did it go? And when was it removed? The investigation reportedly produced an explanation involving a sanitation worker. According to the police version described in the update, CCTV footage showed the area where Mir Raza was found. The location reportedly had plants and a nursery nearby. Police sources allegedly suggested that a sanitation worker came to the area to collect garbage. According to that explanation, the worker noticed the gun lying nearby, picked it up, and placed it inside his garbage bag. The problem doesn't end there. If a person had fired a pistol, investigators would normally expect to find cartridge casings connected to the firing. The report raises another question here too. If the weapon was fired multiple times, there should be corresponding casings. But according to the update, not even one casing was reportedly recovered. So now investigators would potentially have to accept that the same sanitation worker not only found the pistol, but also unknowingly carried away whatever evidence was left around it. And then, according to the criticism being raised, he supposedly didn't report finding the weapon either. That explanation has become one of the major points of controversy surrounding the case. Because the more questions people ask, the harder it becomes to understand exactly what happened at the scene. Mir Raza's father, Mir Hussain, has strongly rejected the idea that his son simply ended his own life. He has accused police of protecting the people actually responsible and of taking the investigation in the wrong direction. His argument is straightforward. If Mir Raza had truly decided to take his own life, his father says, he had many private opportunities to do so. He was reportedly at home. He could have been alone. He could have chosen a private place. So why would he leave his house and go somewhere else? But his father also points to something that happened inside the vehicle on the night of July 28th. According to his account, Mir Raza booked a ride and left home in a car. While he was traveling, he reportedly asked the driver to connect his phone to the vehicle's Bluetooth. The driver did so. Then Mir Raza reportedly played songs. And according to his father, he continued listening to music during the journey. That detail may sound ordinary, but his father believes it is important. His argument is that a person who had already made an immediate decision to end his own life would not necessarily behave so normally moments before it happened. He was connecting his phone. He was choosing songs. He was listening to music. To his father, those actions did not match the picture being presented by investigators. But again, that is the family's interpretation. Listening to music does not prove what someone intended to do. It simply adds another piece to a timeline that investigators need to understand. And then the family raised another disturbing issue. According to the father's account, there were marks of physical assault on Mir Raza's body. There was also reportedly an injury or scar on his hand. His father questioned whether Mir Raza could somehow have caused all of those injuries to himself. That became another major point of contention. Because if there were injuries that appeared significant, they should have been properly documented and explained in the medical examination. And according to the latest update, that's exactly where another major problem emerged. A police surgeon, Dr. Sumaya Saeed, reportedly reviewed Mir Raza's postmortem report and identified 14 serious shortcomings. Among the concerns reportedly raised was that no X-rays had been conducted. Samples or swabs from the hands for the examination of gunshot residue were reportedly not taken. And the forensic examination of residue around the entry wound was also reportedly not carried out properly. Those aren't small details. In a case where investigators are trying to determine whether a person fired a weapon himself, evidence from the hands can become extremely important. Yet according to the reported correspondence, those samples were not collected. And that was only the beginning. Because the questions surrounding the postmortem reportedly went much deeper. And if even some of those concerns are confirmed, the investigation could face an entirely new set of questions. And this is where the case gets even more complicated. According to the reported correspondence from Dr. Sumaya Saeed, the post-mortem examination allegedly contained 14 serious shortcomings. The concerns reportedly included the fact that Mir Raza's X-rays were not conducted. Samples from his hands were reportedly not collected for gunshot residue testing. And the residue around the reported entry wound was also allegedly not scientifically analyzed. For a case where the central question is whether a person fired a weapon himself, those details matter. But the concerns didn't stop there. The correspondence reportedly stated that the internal examination of the skull and neck had not been properly carried out. The forensic wounds were allegedly not measured scientifically. Proper photographs of the injuries were reportedly not available. And the entry and exit wounds were allegedly not subjected to the kind of scientific examination that could help investigators understand exactly what happened. Then there was another issue. According to the reported correspondence, there were concerns about the lack of proper forensic quality photographs documenting injuries across the body. The condition of the body was reportedly already poor, making identification difficult. Yet despite those circumstances, the report allegedly did not properly document certain injuries that the family says were visible. One reported injury involved Mir Raza's hand. His father described it as a scar or mark. But according to the criticism raised by the police surgeon, this was allegedly not properly examined or documented by the relevant medical and forensic teams. And that creates a very basic question. If an injury is visible, why isn't it properly recorded in the medical evidence? There was another concern regarding decomposition. The reported correspondence said the changes caused by decomposition in different parts of the body had not been adequately explained. And because the body could reportedly not be identified easily, another important step was questioned too. A DNA sample was reportedly not obtained for positive identification. That is significant because DNA testing can provide a scientific method of confirming identity when visual identification is difficult. According to the reported correspondence, Dr. Sumaya Saeed had contacted senior police officials several times through WhatsApp groups regarding the matter. But she reportedly did not receive a response. She then emphasized that the case needed to be reviewed on logical and scientific grounds. And if satisfactory answers could not be provided for the objection she had raised, she reportedly suggested considering exhumation. In other words, the question of reopening the grave wasn't simply coming from the family. A police surgeon had reportedly raised concerns about the medical and forensic examination too. The matter was serious enough that clarification was also reportedly sought from a legal officer, Dr. Osama Sheikh. Now step back for a second. The police position reportedly says Mir Raza took his own life because of overwhelming financial pressure. His father says that explanation doesn't make sense. The family questions the missing pistol. They question the missing cartridge casing. They question the injuries reportedly seen on the body. They question the lack of gunshot residue samples. And now questions have reportedly been raised about the postmortem itself. But there's one more piece of information that adds another layer to the story. The body was reportedly estimated to be around 26 hours old when examined. And then investigators reportedly took possession of Mir Raza's Apple smartwatch. His family had previously discussed the watch because, according to their account, Mir Raza had left it at home when he went out. But after police took possession of the watch, another claim began circulating. The data on the smartwatch had reportedly been deleted. And that immediately created another question. When was the data deleted? That's the part that needs to be established through evidence. Because an Apple smartwatch isn't simply a cheap device where someone can casually erase everything without any security. It is connected to a user's digital ecosystem and protected by security features. So if data really was deleted, investigators would need to establish when it happened, how it happened, and who had access to the device. And that becomes even more interesting because, according to the report, investigators had not yet been able to access or examine all of the relevant data from Mir Raza's iPhone. So if the phone's security had not been bypassed, how was information from the watch reportedly deleted? Was the data actually deleted? Was it overwritten? Was it inaccessible? Or is there another explanation? Those are questions that require technical evidence, not assumptions. And this is where the case currently stands. There are two very different narratives. The police side account reportedly points toward financial pressure, debt, depression, and suicide. The family disputes that explanation and points toward the missing firearm, the absence of reported cartridge casings, the behavior inside the vehicle, the injuries on the body, and the disputed forensic examination. Then there is the police surgeon's reported correspondence highlighting 14 shortcomings in the postmortem process. And finally, there is the question of the smartwatch data. None of these details by themselves proves that another person was responsible for Mir Raza's death. But together, they explain why his family is demanding a much more thorough investigation. And if the grave is reopened, the new forensic examination could become one of the most important stages of the entire case. Because after all the arguments, accusations, and competing explanations, there is only one thing that can settle the major questions: evidence. And until that evidence answers them, the biggest question surrounding Mir Raza Ali's death remains unresolved. Lessons from the darkness. 1. Don't let the first explanation become the final answer. When a death is initially explained as suicide or an accident, investigators still need to examine the physical evidence carefully. The first theory should never replace a complete investigation. 2. Forensic details can change everything. Gunshot residue, weapon location, cartridge casings, injury measurements, photographs, X-rays, and DNA can all become critical pieces of a case. Missing or incomplete forensic work can leave major questions unanswered. 3. Digital evidence needs a clear timeline. Phones and smartwatches can contain valuable information about a person's final hours. If data is missing or deleted, investigators need to establish when, how, and by whom it was removed rather than simply assuming what happened. 4. Questions are not proof. The family's concerns are important, but suspicion alone doesn't establish who is responsible. The same principle applies to the police theory. Ultimately, both sides have to be tested against reliable evidence. Lessons from the darkness. In a case filled with unanswered questions, the goal isn't to choose the most convincing story, it's to find the evidence that can prove what actually happened.